Dialogue with Kamal can be positively infectious. He has many stories to tell and anecdotes to share. In this part 2 of Vishwas in Conversation with Professor Kamaljit Singh Bawa, we shall attempt to explore the challenging moments in Kamal's professional career, moments of celebrations, what it took to establish ATREE, his thoughts and plans for the National Biodiversity Mission, lessons that he has learned from Lifescape, his love for Bollywood and passion for photography. So, welcome to part 2 of Vishwas in Conversation with Professor Kamaljit Singh Bawa. Hey, hope you have subscribed to this channel. If you have not, then kindly do subscribe and don't forget to click the bell button to get to know about the latest episode. So, there have been many challenging moments in Kamal Bawa's scientific and research career, as well as there have been moments of celebrations.
As you know, challenges are of different types. You learn from the challenges. I think the main thing is how you overcome those challenges. Of course, it's not always possible to overcome all the challenges, but there are many challenges you can overcome. I think one of the biggest challenges that I had to overcome was I have always been very interested in trees. And a very influential paper that I read about trees was, I think, 2 months after I arrived in the US, was by Daniel Jansen. Why do dry forest trees flower in the dry season or something like that? And that was very remarkable. I said, of course it is true that most of the trees flower in the dry season. That's why I used to go to Darjeeling in the month of February and January. And why is it I never asked this question? And that's where I said, maybe it was a consolation. I should have said, maybe I was not smart enough to ask that question. But my, of course, initial response was that I was not taught how to ask questions. So then I read another paper by Peter Ashton, not Peter Ashton, I'm sorry, by Fedorov, a Russian biologist, who said the reason why you have tremendous tree species richness is the trees in the tropics are inbred because they are isolated. Individuals of a given species are isolated, they are inbred, and inbreeding leads to rapid population differentiation and eventually speciation. And I didn't think that could be true because I could see trees have bright flowers. They seem to be pollinated by a wide variety of organisms. And so there must be outcrossing. And of course, I was working in Seattle at that time with the poplars, and they are outbred. I knew most of the temperate trees are outbred, so tropical trees could not be inbred. So I set up myself to ask the question, are the trees inbred or outbred, and what pollinates them? Mm-hmm. And I wrote the proposal. The proposal got funded. And now I am in the field. Now, how do I access the canopies of these trees to do empirical work and to observe pollinators and all? And it was a challenge. It was a huge, huge challenge. And then comes Gordon Franke. And Gordon Franke and I said, okay, on the top of the Land Rover, we'll build a platform. And on the platform, I will have a step ladder, 8-foot step ladder, and then I will go to the climb the ladder, and then I will have an 8 feet long pole, and I will pull the branches down to make pollinations. I did that for for a year or two, and I would have a field assistant who will hold the ladder, and then the Guanacaste province in Costa Rica, I'll set this thing up. And the winds, I tell you, the winds there in the dry season, they could blow you off the field. And I will have to pull the branches and all that. Anyway, so that was a big challenge. Then this person, Don Perry from California, he writes to me, I like to climb trees. I like to work with you. And I had just gotten the NSF grant. And I was wondering, how I'm going to climb these trees again, in a wet forest, where the trees are twice as tall as the dry forest. So he came to rescue. He was interested in climbing trees. So he climbed trees. He took me up some trees too, and we overcome that challenge. And you have to be persistent. You have to keep doing what you do the best. And
talk about some of celebratory moments of your career.
I think that, I have been very fortunate. There have been there have been a number of celebratory moments. And I remember each of those. I think the first was to getting a Guggenheim Fellowship. For the academic world in the US, Guggenheim is a very ultimate thing because it allows you to take 1 year sabbatical rather than 6 months sabbatical. And so when I called my dean and said, I have received the Guggenheim Fellowship, and he told me that there is another person from philosophy who has also got a Guggenheim Fellowship, which really made me feel very, very good. I felt I was really at a great place because, for a university to land a Guggenheim Fellowship is something for a university, especially not a very large university, to have 2 Guggenheim Fellowships is something very special. Then came the Pew Scholar in the environment. And again, you're nominated and you get this phone call that you will get $150,000 as pocket money, do whatever you want to do. And so then in the same phone call, please don't tell anybody until we make a press announcement. So that was very interesting. The Gunris Award, I was in Delhi, and that was very interesting. That was interesting in the sense that I received this email with the heading, Norway Calling. I said the email must be from a travel agency. I didn't read it until the evening. You say the email, and then I read in the evening, and then again the email said, well, there's an important issue I'd like to discuss with you, if we could speak. And I still didn't know what it was. So I sent him an email that we'll talk tomorrow, and then we talked the next day, and then he told me, and again he told me that I'm not to tell anybody. I think that's the difficult part I have noticed with all these things. But then again, I think when I was to receive the Gunris Prize, I was in Trondheim with my wife, and in the morning I got the letter that I have been elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And normally that would have been such a joyous occasion, but that evening I have to receive the Gunris Prize, and it didn't even register in my mind. And I didn't like that part, the two things coming at the same day. It's strange in a way. When I got the Midori Prize, again, I was getting up at 6 in the morning because my wife had a medical issue. I got this letter, but I was so preoccupied with the problem at hand. It didn't register. So I think these moments, some are very joyous, others are joyous too, but I think it's also, the frame of mind and so on and so forth. No, I consider myself fortunate.
Kamal Bawa would be known in India for the ATREE or Ashoka Trust for research in ecology and environment. How did it happen?
I think ATREE has been quite a journey. I'm very proud of what ATREE has done. I'm very proud of the fact, that we decided to set up this organization, and I think it has been a great learning experience, and it has also been a humbling experience. It's amazing, I think, because you asked me about learnings. You learn when you're doing your professional work, your research and teaching, and of course you learn a lot of things. I learned a lot of things when I was chair of the department. And I think the things you learn there in that capacity are very different. Things you learn as a chair of the board or president of ATREE, I think they are very different.
So talk about the story, because everything has a story.
See, in 90s, a lot of things were happening in India. As you know, it was a very, very exciting period. I feel privileged that I actually, was a participant in 3 transformations of my field. I think the first transformation was in 70s when I feel that field of ecology was transformed by this renewed interest in diversity. Why are tropics so different from the rest of the world? Particularly the role of biological interactions in community structure and community organization, that is mutualism, predation, and so on and so forth. And I was in the thick of these things. I was studying plant-pollinator interactions in the tropics, and my colleagues were all the leading figures in the field. Dan Jansen, whom I will encounter every day in the field in Costa Rica. The second revolution was sort of a very renewed interest in sexual selection. And that too occurred more or less at the same time in 70s. The third revolution was in terms of birth of conservation biology in 80s. And that occurred because everybody became very alarmed about deforestation in the tropics, but deforestation was also occurring in the form of disappearance of old growth forest in the US, and the controversy about spotted owl, and so on and so forth. So a new field was born in 80s in conservation biology. And again, I was in the thick of things. So I wanted to then shift my attention from all this basic work on plant sexuality, on mutualism, study of tropical tree diversity, to sustainable use of tropical forests, and to deforestation. I didn't feel that I could do that in Costa Rica because the problem clearly has social, economic, and political dimensions. So I think that time I decided that I just have to somehow get back to India and start working there. And that was in early 90s. So early 90s, I came with the intention of actually helping a think tank there, and just being there and helping people and helping the organization. But it didn't work that way. At that time, I felt India didn't have institutions that dealt with decline of biodiversity in all its dimensions. That was one thing. Secondly, almost all institutions were science-based, natural science-based. And I didn't think, that is going to lead to the solution of the problem we had at hand. So that's why ATREE was set up. That incidentally coincided, again, with what one might call the fourth revolution of the birth of sustainability science. As you know, that also occurred in the late 90s and early 2000s.
So talk about ATREE as an experience for you.
It has been tough. ATREE is very autonomous organization. I think we take pride in a very decentralized governance. The head of the ATREE is not the president of ATREE or the chairman of the board. The head of the ATREE, for all purposes, is the director of ATREE. The board has an overseeing role. Again, this was a learning, Vishwas. So I think you have to empower people, and you have to empower people at all levels. This is especially important for the NGO world. In the NGO world, I think we have to have a very different definition of leadership. It's leadership. Everybody has to be treated as a leader, and everybody's potential has to be built. So respect for other viewpoints. Third thing, and I'm probably referring to a paper I wrote recently along with some other colleagues on leadership of sustainability science organization, not accepting status quo, learning, be patient. You are in this thing overall. Learning, everybody has many positive elements. Build on positive, don't dwell on negative, and always start in good faith, trusting people, unless you are proven wrong, unless you are proven wrong again, unless you are proven wrong again.
Referring to the National Biodiversity Mission, because I'm sure the mission did not happen all of a sudden. Talk about the genesis of the National Biodiversity Mission and something, if there are background stories about how did it come up to this stage where it is today.
I think the seeding of the biodiversity mission was perhaps when I was asked by the Department of Biotechnology to help them with this initiative in Northeast. They wanted to have a program on diversity, and I devoted almost 2 or 3 months, bringing people together from India's leading institutions. We brought together individuals from, I think, 10 institutions and 30 principal investigators to develop this very coherent program on assessment of biodiversity, its sustainable use of biodiversity, the economic value of biodiversity. And then I think I started thinking about 2 things. One is, I've always been very much interested in biodiversity assessment. And I do feel that people in India don't realize that we really know very little about biodiversity. And here probably my rough edges might come because I talk very frankly, and I'm sick of the comments I've seen on the proposal that BSI has done this thing and ZSI has done this thing. They are very, very fine institutions. They have a lot of potential. They are much more needed now than ever before. So let me first get that out of the way. If they have done this thing, everything, as many reviewers would claim often, then why do we need them? Why not shut them down? No, we can't shut them down. We have to help them grow. We have to empower them to do more and more. We have to have more resources available to them. And the one day I think I was thinking, and the initial discussion took place actually at the India Biodiversity Portal meeting. Why not map all of India's life? Not only biodiversity, people, cultures, ethnic origins. Why aren't we using information technology to the extent we can? We are a superpower in information technology in many respects. But our use of technology, to know what we have, to manage what we have, to use what we have, is not there. So these things, and then that idea was there. And then I was there in July, I think July 2018 in Bangalore, and I invited people for a brainstorm meeting, all the people I can think of in Bangalore. And it was amazing. Almost everybody turned out. And I told them that there is no agenda, it's just free, open discussion. Everybody came. And then, I talked about this vision to do something very big, in biodiversity science. How do we strengthen biodiversity science in India? And we have very strong scientific traditions in biology, in physics, chemistry, in almost all sciences. But over time, I think the biodiversity science has not received that much attention. But on the other hand, this is the science that is very relevant. And I think the ideas came, there were people from the agriculture side, people from climate change side, people from human health side, medicinal plants, bioeconomy. And we discussed and then after the meeting, we wrote a concept note. It seemed to be coming together, and that was sort of the beginning of the biodiversity mission. And everybody was very positive, very enthusiastic, including Dr. Mathur, I think, who participated. I think it was that meeting or a later meeting from Dehradun.
One of the criticism that it's very one city centric. How can we make it pan-India? How can we make sure that this is a collaboratory mission? Because at the end of it, this is for the first time in independent India, there is a mission being carved on biodiversity at a very highest scientific body level as it comes from the Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Council. And again, these are very early thoughts because the mission is yet to get into its execution mode.
One of our original notes talked about having regional nodes. Not at all. Nobody in the Bangalore-based groups thinks that it is going to be Bangalore-centric. This is the discussion we had right in the beginning. We had discussion in almost every meeting. It is a pan-India program. And there are two ways of doing it. One is to have regional nodes. The other is to have, as of now, the mission has two components. One is the work that is going to be done by the core teams, and the other is through grants. And the grants are going to be clearly, grants. We are going to have a national program. And to give you one example of Vishwas, I have been saying from the beginning that we need to, one of the outcomes has to be 5 or 10 years from now, we have 10, 15 centers of excellence in biodiversity science. So if after 5 years, you say the centers of excellence are NCBS, ATREE, Indian Institute of Science and Nature Conservation Foundation, if somebody says that these are the centers of excellence, I would say we have made no progress. Progress zero, okay? So that is our concept of what we want to achieve. So if we say, if we are going to train that many postdocs, and if we have to take into account every parameter and measure outside Bangalore. And so I think the regional, the regional idea, the regional nodes is still there, out there. It could become feasible. It might be feasible maybe in the third year of the program. And there are other models. We are very open to them, to all types of suggestions.
I thought this is an opportunity to come out with a ambition statement as well as the broader vision for the mission itself. And from a Lifescape of Kamal Bawa, what are the secrets of success?
I don't think I have a monopoly. One is persistence, and they are not in any particular order. Persistence, humility, respect for other viewpoints, patience, ambition. You have to have ambition, intense desire to learn, curiosity. Curiosity, I think, is very, very critical. How to manage your time. That's a weakness on my part. I would like to learn more about how to manage my time. You must have some special skills, some unique skills. I think that helps a lot. Love for nature, very important. I'm very happy with the way my life has gone. I tell people in 100 lifetimes, I will not change anything, including a 90-minute discussion or a 2-hour discussion with Vishwas Chavan. That still will be there in 100 lifetimes. And I would like to write more. I would like to learn more. I think I learn every day. I learn every day. I think I sometimes reflect on the day in terms of what I have learned. And I think that's very important, very, very critical. I think people very often give up very early on. We should not give up.
Having grown up in India, being a Punjabi, you must be a Bollywood fan at one point in time.
Yeah, I like Bollywood stars. You can ask me, who has been my favorite star. I think has been Dilip Kumar.
Mm-hmm.
My latest encounter was with Ranbir Kapoor, whom I met in Darjeeling, I think 3 years ago. One of my assistants there was very persistent that I meet him. So I presented him my Himalaya book. I think I have a photograph somewhere too with him.
Talk about your passion for photography.
You see, interest in photography was really profound in many ways. I think very early on, when I was in Punjab University Botany Department and started to work in the Himalaya, I used to be accompanied by a Professor R.S. Patania, who had the department's big camera. It was a plate camera. It was a Linhof camera. And the Linhof camera at that time had its own mystique. And I was always very curious. And Professor Patania used to take very good photographs. And his photographs would appear as center spread in Illustrated Weekly of India. So I became very intrigued by the whole thing. And then I had the opportunity to buy a used East German camera from a tea estate manager. And along with the camera, he gave me a roll, 12. So I took shots. And I thought 2 of those 12 shots were pretty good. And I said, why not try for center spread? Let's be ambitious. Well, Professor Patania has, Illustrated Weekly under his control, and I will try Dharam Yug, which many people may not know was the sister publication of Illustrated Weekly of India. And lo and behold, they accepted those 2 photographs as center spreads. And I was very encouraged by the whole experience. And I said, well, this is something, I should devote more time to. But at that time, the photography was so expensive, the rolls were so expensive. I couldn't even afford to buy a film roll. So I came to the US, and the US, the interest lay dormant for some time until I went to Costa Rica. And then when I went to Costa Rica, I will take some photos. And then a team of National Geographic Society came to photograph something. And I saw them taking photographs. And they were exposing like 5 or 6 rolls, 32 frames at that time. This is before digital cameras. In a matter of 5 minutes. And I said, wow, I mean, that's how you take professional photographs.
Mm-hmm.
So I had two rolls with me. I had spent a month in Costa Rica. I have not taken a single photograph because you're so busy in the field, you don't have time. And then I'm waiting for the boat to go back to Boston. And I saw this beautiful orchid in flower. And I said, let me expose these two rolls and let me follow the National Geographic model. I will expose 64, what I'm going to do with these rolls back in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I took those photographs. And those, if you're taking 64 frames, I think some are likely to be very good. So I said, why not center spread again? Try center spread. And I sent it to the Natural History magazine, which was the magazine of the American Museum of Natural History. And they said, yeah, they're going to publish it 2 days later. I said, wow. And not only that, they told me that they are going to pay me $500 for that. That was a big amount of money at that time.
Well, $500 is a big amount even today.
Now, 3 days later, I get a call from this German newspaper, the main newspaper. I think it used to be Der Spiegel or something like that, Der Spiegel. They said they want to publish that thing in their Sunday magazine. I said, I'm not sure if I have the rights. So I called the Natural History, and they said, no, you have the rights. We had only one time right, granted by you. I said, okay. And the German newspaper said, we are going to pay you $400. And I said to myself, do I need my job? Really? I mean, this is a good way to make money.
That was a honey trap, huh?
A week later, the Geo magazine calls me.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they want to publish the photo. And they will pay $250. Anyway, it went on and on. Then when I start working on the Western Ghats, I go to people and talk about Western Ghats. These are the ordinary lay people.
Yeah.
And they ask me, is there something they can read about Western Ghats? Can you believe, Vishwas, I can't suggest to them a book that they can read. So I decided to do this book, coffee table book on Western Ghats. I was thinking of doing a book, but then I decided to do a coffee table book that will also help me in fundraising. And then I met Sandesh Kadu. I think he was at that time 27 years old. I introduced myself and he said, oh, Dr. Bawa. And my second sentence to him is, do you want to do a book with me? And he said, wow, I'm a book. So we do this book on the Western Ghats. And then I decided to do the book on the Himalaya.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, well, as far as plants are concerned and the landscapes are concerned, I'm going to take things in my own hand. And, and I'm going to do some photography. And of course, Sandesh was a wonderful teacher, really wonderful. I learned a lot of things. So in the Himalaya book, then I had, number of photographs, almost all plants and many of the landscapes.
It has been an amazing time, and thank you very much for being on Vishwas in Conversation.
Thank you, Vishwas. I enjoyed the conversation, and thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Let me say, always a pleasure to talk to you. Anyway.
If you have to describe Vishwas,
The first thing that comes to mind is, thoughtfulness, knowledge, idealistic, humble, and understanding.
hey, hope you have subscribed to this channel. If you have not, then kindly do subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell button to get to know about the latest episode.